Hi, I'm Dr. Dan Ratner. Today I'm here for my fourth session with Diane as we wrap up and talk about action steps. It's always a little bit sad getting to the end, but I do treasure these times together, and I can see how much she's gotten out of it, and I'm going to hear this last step now and see where she's at and make a plan with her to move ahead. If you haven't already, click subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, hit like if you like what you're hearing, and put your comments below, and I'll get back to you personally. And finally, you can reserve your place in one of my seminars or purchase any of my PDFs at www.crushingdoubt.org. Diane, it is a pleasure to have you here as always, although it's always a little bittersweet, that fourth session. But I know that, the way that we interact, we'll be interacting for life. So
yeah,
I'm really excited because you sent me an email talking about some of your successes. And I actually thought, even before we dive into action steps, would you mind sharing just a couple of those?
Yeah, not at all. Well, what I did is I shared with Dan some of the things that have happened with my family this week that really triggered me, and noticed that my pain flared up quite significantly. So just working through the columns and working with the, going through all of the steps and looking at things, and it didn't seem all that dramatic, but then I went off and did something else, and I was in the garden. My pain was quite flared up. I was lightheaded and all my symptoms were there. And I came in from gardening and I thought, I don't have any pain. This does work. It wasn't like one of the other things where in the midst of a flare up, it stopped right then and there. It just gradually dissipated, and I'm busy doing other things. And it was like, wow. This absolutely works.
You had a way to frame it to yourself that really worked.
I think I had worked through the doubts, and I absolutely know that it was TMS. But this week, there's no doubt. There's just no doubt that it is.
That's the idea of crushing doubt. So that's great. Okay, so listen. Normally, when we do an action steps session, I might run through a whole bunch of different action steps, but you've done some pre-work, which, as you noted, nobody should feel pressure to do it this way. Mm-hmm. But this highlights something that we don't get to see necessarily in every session because you've done some work in advance, and so we'll utilize that. So you identified the action steps that kind of jumped out at you most.
Yeah.
And then you also wrote your own kind of versions of them. You took the headline of them and made them your own. Is that right?
Yeah, I did. And between the time that I sent those to you and now, I don't know why, but all of a sudden one of Nelson Mandela's quotes came up. And I don't know if you are familiar with his quote about success, about our deepest fear is not that we are weak, that our deepest fear is that we're powerful beyond belief. And it just kind of hit me, and I thought, yikes. So I think that will be included in my action steps too, that it's just looking at, as we gain our power, that there's some fear in that. And, but it's possible. Yeah,
there is. And that Nelson Mandela quote was actually brought to me by a patient that I've been working with for many, many years.
Oh,
and
yeah.
So I love that quote.
Mm-hmm.
And as she watches this, she'll be thrilled to hear that quote again.
Yeah.
So let's talk about what you're going to do, because first of all, let me remind everyone out there that what the action steps are is they are action steps of thinking more than anything else. Sometimes it's a physicalized action like resuming normal physical activity or don't test, things like that. But mostly it's action steps of thought. And each action step is meant to target one of the columns.
Mm-hmm.
So usually I have action steps that are like, these are my emotions action steps. These are my doubt action steps. These are my power action steps. But sometimes there are also just an action step that covers all three. So as we go through the ones that resonated to you, mm-hmm. we're gonna keep honing this plan. And you may find that you got this list together. I think you have 22 of them today. You might end up honing them down, or you might say, you know what, this one can be combined.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I say that is that you're developing your own system within my system.
Right. Yeah.
So let's look at what you have so far. So I'm going to read through them, and I want you to tell me what you're thinking about them. So first step you have done is resolve all doubt or confusion, which of course If you want to resolve the doubt column,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely. So should I read what you wrote, or do you want
Sure.
to? Okay, I'll read what you wrote, and then
Okay.
we'll go from there. You say, I think I have resolved all doubt except for feeling that I can turn this around. So level 3 doubt.
Mm-hmm.
But I am seeing that this seems to be pretty common, which it is. But I'm also seeing so many others are getting better, so I can too. I'm also starting to have some successes. So good. What you might add to, you don't even need to add to this, but I just want to highlight certain things. One success does lead to another. 2 successes leads to even more because it wasn't a fluke.
Yeah.
So you're going to keep building on your success, and that's how we get where we are. It's kind of like, a professional athlete or a professional musician. They get better and better and better at what they're doing. They didn't start off being able to do what they can do now.
Yeah.
Right? It also is very common to have doubts about the self. That's the level of doubt that lingers the most,
Mm-hmm.
and it leads right into the power column. And the power column is where you'll get your answers. So let's talk about the next one. I've had a doubt that my experience in my family of origin was not actually that bad, and lots of people had it worse than I did. I've had this fact reinforced by many people, but I keep reminding myself that my body does not lie. Yes, thank goodness.
Mm-hmm.
My body is telling me otherwise. I had parents who meant well, were unskilled, and came from their own background of trauma. I do not have to blame them, but I am starting to set much firmer boundaries with my family. Good. This is good. You're resolving that conflict, because otherwise that conflict lingers and doesn't allow you to assert your own power, to accept your trauma. You did have trauma, Diane.
Yeah.
You did.
Yeah. And just the things that happened last week, not big deal things, but stuff that came up for me.
Yep.
Setting boundaries, and again, noticing what happens in my body, and, heart palpitations and feeling lightheaded, and thinking, if this was just someone I knew on the street, I would have no problem at all being assertive. So my body's really telling me something there. And it's like, okay, I can do this nicely, and I can say what my boundaries are. And guess what? It worked.
Well, and this is the trauma of family life, is that we feel the stakes are so high.
Yeah.
We don't interact with them like other people.
Yeah.
Okay, so the third one, you're asking yourself the question, and a question can be an action step. Do I feel I am able to live the life I want? Just by asking that question, you can start to move into other solutions. So you say, no, I haven't because of my health and pain. But even though I'm 68, I intend to live my best life from here on, and hope to help others to sort this out early in their lives. So there's an action step that has 2 parts to it.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to figure out what the limitations you might have are, but you're not going to give yourself extra limitations.
Right.
Absolutely not. And in fact, you're recognizing sometimes the limitations are ones you're maybe imagining or worried about, as opposed to what really is.
Yeah. Yeah.
We'll have to see what that is. In addition, the second part, I would say, is kind of moving towards your purpose. And again, you get to organize this any way you want. It doesn't matter what I say about it. It matters that your action steps are organized around things you can actually think about or do that get you out of the trouble. And it sounds like you're doing a great job with it. All right. 4. TMS has been a communication to my body for the painful feelings of not feeling seen, appreciated, and loved for who I am within my family, and feeling judged. I have the message now. The only thing I would add to it, and this, it's really, you're already saying this, is I will always take my body at its word.
Oh yeah, that's a good point.
You already know that, but I just want to add it because we want the action steps to really nail something.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, 5. Power can be in relation to the power dynamic between me and others. Yep. I think I have a fairly healthy self-esteem, and for the most part, I can be appropriately assertive with people, but I've not been able to be with my own family of origin. Always the scariest. But I am starting to set much firmer boundaries and noticing when I find this hard and what happens in my body. Okay.
Yeah, just what I referred to. Yeah.
So here's the thing I want to get a little bit more honed about this. When you set the boundaries, what is it you're doing? Do you do self-talk to get yourself to do it? How do you think through what the boundary is going to be? Do you have a way to do that?
I hadn't really thought of it as being a process. I think it just kind of pops into my mind. And again, being the goodest, I try and think of what's the nicest way of doing this and how can I do it in a way that's not going to flare things up.
Okay, so here's the thing. Ask that question, but I can hear the question that's getting left behind is, what do I need?
Oh, right. Okay.
Now, I understand you're setting a boundary, so it is partially about what you need. But you might need more. You're going to have a tendency to set a very kind boundary, a soft boundary, and the kindness is good, but the softness might be hard.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a funny way to say it. Softness might be hard. Do you know what I mean? It's like...
Yeah, I do.
Maybe you might... I just hear something in this where I'm like, I wonder if you're going to look out for yourself enough.
Well, as I've discussed with you, I have a family member that I can't just be kind. I have to just be firm and look out for me.
Yep.
And
right.
It's taken me quite a while to get to that point that, the kindness, I wouldn't be mean. I'll be appropriate, but
sure.
I'll be firm. And kindness isn't going to be the first.
Okay, so just make sure, and this actually leads into the next one, goodism versus power.
Yeah.
You just got to get the balance right.
Yeah.
There is an answer that can be kind to the other people, that can make you feel that you're that good, kind person you want to be, but also doesn't compromise you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good. So you say in goodism versus power, I'm comfortable with power as long as it is used for good and not harm, both for myself and those around me. That's great. I am very triggered by injustices in general in the world, and I think it has been from my own experiences of being treated unfairly. Sounds about right. I have been known many times to defend the underdog. Well, I'm a Cleveland sports fan, so I'm not going to argue with you there. I always like the underdog in movies or whatever. I think a thing you could add to this to make it feel even more aligned with you is that you're not just going to defend the underdog, but you're going to also include you in that.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Because you're
the good guy.
Yeah.
You're the good guy in the story.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's an action step you said. You're going to recognize every flare-up you get through makes you stronger. And you said, I agree, I'm not there yet, but I have had a few dynamic shifts that make me absolutely know I am on the right track. So, yes, people shouldn't just feel that they've got to just trust me. You know, it's more that you got to see it.
Yeah.
And you are seeing it. And the more you see it, the better it gets. And just remember, when you run into a situation where it's not happening the way you want, you're still working at it, but you can always look back on your successes. Say, I remember that time when my heart was racing and I felt in danger, but I settled down, talked myself through it. It'll never be harder than that first time.
Yeah. And for me, that time it was the pain as well. And I've always gone to physio, and it went over the edge where I thought, okay, here we go. This time I am going to have to go to physio. But through that whole process, that's when I thought, no, I'm going to go out and garden and do whatever. This is my body. And came back in, and it's like, hey, my pain is gone. I don't need to call my physio.
Right. So another way of putting that is you didn't give in to fear. You resumed normal physical activity. You challenged the illogic of it.
Yeah.
I mean, those are 3 different action steps, but they're kind of all rolled into one of what you did.
Yeah.
You're going to go ahead and live your life. So however you categorize this that works for you, as long as you understand what it is you're getting at when you look at this and you're like, yeah, that's right. Oh, yes. Yeah. That's how I came up with my action steps list. It's all the things that ever worked for me. But I got very specific about it to lend these ideas to people. Really, I could probably sum it up in maybe 20, something like that, 15 to 20. Yeah. Okay, here's another. You are planning to take back the power in your relationships. This is obviously a power column action step. You said, I'm starting to do this, treading carefully with a sibling as we are co-caring for my elderly mother. Yep. So I do not want to create a lot of drama in my mother's last months. However, I have been setting much firmer boundaries and have been getting pushback from it, but I am okay with that. Yeah, see, this is another action step, is try not to be so afraid of the anger of other people when you're doing something that is just okay. There's nothing wrong with it.
Mm-hmm.
What I like that I'm hearing here is primarily that you're giving yourself room for that, but it's also, I hear that you're not having to change who you are.
Mm-hmm.
You do not have to sacrifice who you are. You want to be kind to your mother in her last months.
Yeah.
That's important to you too.
Yeah.
So you lay out the different things that are important to you on the table, and that will tell you, okay, if these things are out on the table, I need to do this.
And the other thing with that is, in terms of my sibling, the worst thing that could have happened would be an estrangement and limited or no contact. Well, that has happened. Mm-hmm. And so I think, and hopefully this will help other people, I have survived that. I've done everything that I could to try and sort it out. So even if it is a worst case scenario, we'll survive. We'll get through.
And you know what? I just want to say there is a worst case scenario. There's an even worse case scenario, which is, let's say you avoided the estrangement, but you felt betrayed and unsafe. Mm-hmm. That's worse. That's actually worse. To be able to have the peace with yourself that you did your best. Yeah. You did everything you could.
Yeah. Well, what you just laid out, I did go through that for a while.
Sure.
So
for a long time. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's why I'm saying it, because it was worse.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I love that statement. I did what I could. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of people who say that kind of thing, and they're using it as an excuse to say, I did what I could. Don't need to look at this. I don't have to worry about that with you. You go above and beyond to try to do it. So when you say you did your best, we know that's you finally giving yourself some peace. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. There's nothing you could do about it. So there's some disappointments in life we cannot avoid, and you no longer are going to work and beat your head against a brick wall.
Yeah, and last week we talked about rumination, and you had made a suggestion, which was so simple. I think, how in 15 years did I not think of this? But it's really worked for me. And, through the week, as stuff would come into my thoughts, I'd think, no, I'm diminishing my own power here, and I don't need to do that anymore. Yep. So
rumination is a diminishment of your own power.
Yeah.
Right.
So thank you for that, because that's really made a huge.
Actually, I'm even going to write that one down because it's an important one. It's and it's going to help a lot of people, and you'll remember I came up with it with you.
Well, interestingly, people have said to me, and I hear it with other people as well, just let it go. And I think, why do people say that? Because if you could let it go, you would. Yep. But phrasing it the way you did made the difference. Slight shift in the wording. You didn't ask me to let it go. You just pointed out that I'm diminishing my own power and just staying in my power.
Right, because there's no upside to letting it go. That just feels like surrender, or not in a good way.
Yeah.
And it's self-betrayal to do it that way. What we really need to do is get it reclassified.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Get it put in the right box.
Yeah.
If you're going to put something away, you got to know where it goes.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Yeah. Okay. Choose to value yourself at the highest level. I love this one. This one everybody needs to do. Do not accept people in your life in any deep way who do not make you feel good about yourself. Yep. I've been starting to do this over the past year myself. Actually, over the last, I'd say a couple of years, but you've been starting to do it over the past year. Mm-hmm. The few relationships I have that mean working at it, I am just walking away from, and I'm sure you're willing to work at it, but not if they're not working at it also. Mm-hmm. And if they're not valuing you, if I'm not treated with respect, then I walk away from the relationship now. Exactly. Mm-hmm. And what usually happens is we kind of almost back ourselves into a corner of confusion where we say, well, I don't know, maybe they didn't mean that, or maybe I'm overinterpreting it. There's nothing complicated about it. People who are good to you, mm-hmm. it's very clear right from the start. There could be misunderstandings, but they get fixed.
Yeah.
With the people.
Yeah, exactly. With people that are willing to work at it, they'll see that there's something going on and be willing to work at it.
Yes, exactly.
And these aren't my words, but I love this line. I'm just not willing to settle for the emotional crumbs anymore. If that's all people are willing to give me, then that's okay. But I'll just step away, and I have a big enough network that I don't need that.
No, nobody ever went to a crumb restaurant.
Yeah, that's right.
Nobody wants that.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
So, and that leads us into this other one, being fiercely in your own corner. You say yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
I think it's really important. We're on this journey of ourselves. I talk about the power of aloneness, and you have to be in your journey.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to forget about everybody else. That's not what being fiercely in your own corner means. It just means I matter to me, and I'm going to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anything you would add to it in terms of what you understand of it?
No, I just like your line with that. And I've been using it a lot with other people as well. Good. Crediting you.
Even if you didn't, but I'm glad you're using it. That's great. Okay. Accepting the trauma fully. You say, I think I have finally accepted this. That is huge. I mean, when it comes to emotional peace, this is incredibly huge. Everybody has to accept their trauma fully. I think I finally accepted this, and instead of focusing on all of the stories, I can now put my energy into my passions and moving forward with life. I'm now trusting the message from my body. I couldn't put it any better. This is what the symptoms in the power column, this is the communication.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted you to finally mourn your losses, to recognize what you went through, so that you could then enact the great stuff that's in you. So the best is yet to come.
I think for a lot of us, there's a place where we do just want to tell our stories over and over, but it doesn't help. There's a place where you want to be acknowledged, but when you're still doing it years later and it's the same old story, you're not moving forward.
Well, especially if you're trying to tell it to people who aren't listening.
Yeah.
Like you told the story to me and I'm listening.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're listening even more. So I think in a way, your story finally did get told.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that validation, which I really, I just am so happy that you were able to hear what I had to say, because I feel totally validated. And that's part of it. That's part of the healing.
Yeah. Yeah, and I do want to highlight this, because people go to therapy for years and years and years looking for the validation, but the piece that gets missed, for a couple. One, it doesn't get specific enough. It doesn't get to the core. It doesn't capture that broadness and the specificness at the same time.
Yeah.
And it also, there's a lot of focus on just telling the story as opposed to shifting the story to a powerful one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I think we've done that, and I'm proud of you, and I think this work has been great, and I hear how much you're really integrating it.
Yeah.
Okay, so you said this is another one that jumped out at you, because when I often say look through the action steps, it's exhaustive, but there can be even more than that, but there's a lot. You got to pick out the ones that resonate for you, and this one did. Recognize that I had no choice in the defense my unconscious mind chose. You said this is helpful, as I have seen myself as weak in some areas, but I am now working on my many strengths. I have a close friend who I really admire and who I've always felt really sees me, and has told me many times that she feels I am the strongest person she knows. I will focus on the feedback of close friends like this instead of all the other messages I have received. Yes. I don't accept feedback from anybody who's not in the inner circle. I mean, I'll think about the feedback for new people, but people who attack me sometimes and they don't see the best in me, that's like listening to a doctor who doesn't understand anything about mind-body work.
Yeah, exactly.
There's they're not a trusted source. No reason to give them that power, and I think it's great that you're not doing that. I love that you're accepting who you are, and that includes the defense your unconscious mind chose, because as I said, the people who choose this defense, it's a very high-level defense. It's a very considerate defense.
Mm-hmm.
You did a great job.
And of course, I didn't know that before. And so, one's own belief, my belief, and then the belief that we get feedback for is that we are weak or weak in some areas. And I've certainly had my share of that, but I don't believe that any longer at all.
I actually don't believe that the way anybody is a weakness.
Mm-hmm.
It's a trait.
Yeah.
And it means something. And it often comes out of some kind of strength, actually. Maybe somebody, that's okay. Maybe somebody is able to hyper focus, but it makes it so that they miss certain cues.
Yeah.
So what? Let's all, if we can all stop judging ourselves,
mm-hmm.
then we can stop judging each other, because this is a complicated line. People say, oh, they're doing their best.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not actually always true. But with somebody like you, it is. A goodist or somebody who takes the somaticizing defense as their defense, they're doing their best.
Mm-hmm.
And you can feel good about being one of those people. There's many people who are really doing their best. There's some who aren't, and you will use that line of, we're all doing our best. Not everybody is doing their best. That cheapens the whole experience. If you're going to say everybody's doing their best, that means somebody who's doing a bad job is doing as good a job as you. That's not true.
Yeah. And I think the people that do their best, I know when I'm not. I know I can do better. So, yeah.
Me too. I don't always do my best, but I do have the goal to always do my best, and I do try to hold myself to that standard.
Yeah. And you probably are accountable when you don't.
I certainly try to be. Yeah. It's like when people apologize, even if I feel that the other person was also in the wrong, I don't bring that into my apology. Because that's not me doing my best.
Yeah.
Me doing my best would be to say, here's what I know I did, and I am sorry about it.
Yeah. The same.
And then there's no but.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, now you mentioned rumination is as doubt is that takes you out of your power. So we already covered that one. But I'm glad that helps. Here's another one. Do not take on internally what is happening for others. Okay. As a very empathic person, I do have to constantly check. These are Diane's words. I do have to constantly check in that I am not taking on the pain of others, which I seem to automatically do. Yep. I can be there for others with the awareness that I do not need to also take on their pain. That's right. We can be loving to other people and there for other people without falling on the grenade all the time. And this comes from a strength, remember? You're deeply empathic. There's nothing wrong with that. Some people will say, and they've said it to me, oh, you're overly sensitive. No, I'm not. I'm more sensitive than other people in a good way. But my core narrative and my whole sense of self, I'm going to find that positive way of looking at me, not just like as a trick of the mind, but because I'm right.
Yeah, exactly.
Actually is good.
Yeah.
Okay, you also listed view trauma not as something that makes you weak, but one that makes you feel significantly stronger. Okay, so these are from the action steps I listed, and then Diane has commentary on them. You said, Diane, I have learned a tremendous amount and have gained many new skills because of the trauma I experienced, and I now have the ability to turn this into something good. Absolutely. Listen, this whole podcast comes out of my trauma. If I didn't have that, I really wouldn't be much good to you guys. Maybe I could be in some other way, but not in this way. The trauma is what makes us who we are.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that allows, go ahead.
Well, we all have that possibility of using it to do positive, whether that is helping other people or however that looks. We have that opportunity. Yeah.
That's right. Okay, next one. Identify when you are or are not in trauma. I've talked about this. I just talked about it in the seminar today. I was talking about that you got to recognize the signs of being in trauma, and most of them are body signs. And you're saying my body truly does tell me what's going on. The past couple of weeks, you're starting to see this and to nip it in the bud by paying attention to your body. It can be things like, I'm not seeing as well, or I can't concentrate as well, or I just feel anxious or icky, or you'll feel it in your body. Trauma doesn't feel good.
Mm-hmm.
And there are many times where I don't even realize what the trauma is, but I'm like, I'm in trauma. And the more that we do that, the more we learn to recognize it, and the less deeply we go into it, actually.
Mm-hmm. Well, and interesting that you say that, because I've experienced that too, and not necessarily to me in direct relation to something that has just happened. I'll start having, some symptoms, lightheaded or headache starts or whatever, and I think I can't be in trauma now, and I think, no, I am. Okay, so what's going on? And then using your columns to go through it and go, okay, well, what is going on? And I think, oh, it was last Friday. That's what it was. And I've been thinking about it. And
Yep.
So
you're letting your body.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
It's not always immediate. It didn't happen. It didn't necessarily relate to something that happened 10 minutes ago. Sometimes it can be, a day or two before.
Yeah, well, sometimes your body can basically be like, hey, Diane, you've been in trauma for 3 days now. Hey, can you recognize it?
Yeah.
But you're learning to trust your body.
Mm-hmm.
It's so much easier that way.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to question it. It is right. It's right all the time.
Yeah.
And so you don't have to be left wondering all the time. Meanwhile, I also hear another thing, which is, you make sense.
Mm-hmm.
Your body makes sense. These are all other ways we could talk about action steps. That could be the one that jumped out at you, but you're capturing the ones that work for you. Okay, keep all of your power. Working on this one. I am beginning to see the many ways that I do give power away. Yes, I'm definitely a goodist, a 2 on the Enneagram, a people pleaser, but I am not a doormat. You never struck me as that, so I agree. My action steps will be to focus on my strengths and develop them, and start to identify when I give my power away. This is great because you're recognizing that you might give your power away, but you're not giving your power away in recognizing that. You're not saying, I'm terrible, I give away my power, which would be giving away your power.
Yeah.
You're instead saying, okay, everybody gives away their power some, which they do.
Mm-hmm.
Now you can start to recognize it, and you can start to not do that so much.
Mm-hmm.
There is a big difference between being a goodist and giving power away.
Yes. Yeah.
That's where goodism and power are not at all mutually exclusive.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, good. I'm glad I see this on your list. Use your aggression as fuel. Because you're such a nice person. I want to make sure that you have that aggression as fuel in there somewhere.
Yeah.
I have a lot of anger with a family member and that person's spouse and children. Journaling about it has not worked for me. It is not a repressed emotion, right? Because you know it. And writing about it is like vicarious trauma and just puts me back into trauma. Good. I'm glad you're recognizing that.
Mm-hmm.
If it's not doing anything for you and it's just making you relive hell, you don't need to do that. But redirecting this anger into helping others and supporting people like Dan and his work is a way I can use this anger in a positive way and lessen the negative impact on myself. Exactly. The toxic abusers I've had in my life, I take them with me in my mind, and I go to the toxic abusers in other people's lives, and not to those people specifically, but to the people who are being abused, and I say, hey, that's not okay for you. I don't want that for you. And I fight for them.
I know you do.
I said I put out that podcast on narcissists and how to get away from them. That was me channeling my aggression.
Yeah.
I was thinking of certain people, but not just my people. All of your people.
Yeah.
Everybody's people. Because we've all experienced it, and it's not fair.
Well, one of my big fears was that I have so much anger that I think, what am I going to do with it? Am I going to live with this for the rest of my life? So this is kind of like your doubt suggestion on rumination.
Right.
That I've got some way of dealing with the anger that I don't have to go and pound on somebody or yell at them or whatever, that I can use that energy and just channel it in a positive way and just get that energy moving.
And you don't have to compromise who you are. It's just, you're right. This is exactly like recognizing that rumination is a diminishment of power. Anger is generally seen as, oh my God, it'll just do bad things. There's nothing good to do with it. To recognize there is something good to do with it. That's important for people like me and you. Yeah.
Because who wants to go around feeling angry all the time? It just,
And also people who are goodists, the last thing they want to do is hurt people who don't deserve it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And when I say people who don't deserve it, I don't mean that lots of people deserve it. There are some people who deserve a good, boundary, let's say.
Yeah.
But I love to use aggression to get for the right things. Okay, recognize your own agency. As you put it, I am not helpless. I can do this, and I can do this in my own time. There's a lot of gifts in there to the self. There's a lot of good self-care. Okay, get attention off the symptoms. I am working hard at getting out and doing things in spite of symptoms and gradually becoming physically more active. Good. This is all, there's a couple of action steps in here. There's resume normal physical activity. There's maybe, this might be in there, think emotionally, not physically. That can help you do that. But getting attention off of symptoms is all about the power column. It's just go be powerful. Go do your thing. Instead of worrying, can I garden? Go garden.
Yeah, exactly.
And enjoy it.
Yeah.
All right, we have two others, and then we're going to start to talk about the plan.
Okay.
Because you already have it mostly down, but just want to see where we're at. Dealing with the isolation of TMS or mind-body issues. As you put it, very few people in my life truly understand how much I have struggled and suffered. But I am pretty good at recognizing suffering in others, and I will use my strengths to help others through their own journey. It really helps me heal from my own emotional pain, helping others. Great. So you found a way to channel this.
Yeah.
Now, meanwhile, not only did you find a way to channel it, but actually you're less isolated.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. You've got your community. It's our community.
Yeah.
Which is another reason I built this. It's a community for everyone else, but it's also a community for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And it sounds like you're doing much the same thing. You're using your strengths and helping other people, and that's probably helping you a lot too. Yeah.
It absolutely is. And it's affirming my view of the world also. I wanted to know there is some world where there's a lot of goodness. Where there's people like me who really do want the best for other people. I'm not trying to say I'm so great.
No, and it doesn't cross
that. Really good.
Yeah.
But there's lots of people who are really good. So I'm not distinguishing myself from them. However, there's lots of people who are not so good. And I think it's best that we find the people who really value each other and who support each other. I'm going to do a podcast on this idea that in comedy, there's a rule that the first rule of improv is always say yes.
Yeah.
Well, that's also true of emotional openness, of vulnerability. Always say yes. If somebody's brave enough to open up like you're being here, I'm not going to say no to that.
Yeah.
Never.
Yeah.
And we help that way. We're the ones who are saying yes to that, and that means we're valuing it. So I'm glad to have you here with me. Now, this is I didn't expect to see this on your list. I'm glad. Success is revenge. I love this. You said, I love this. This just feels so much better than negativity and ruminating. As things come up, I just remember this line, and I find it really shifts my attitude. That's great. Can you talk about it a little bit, what you're thinking with it?
Well, back to the rumination and the anger. I do feel like I want revenge, and all of a sudden there it is, success. Yeah. And I do love it. It's just like, this is so simple, and it fits in who I am as a person. It still fits on me being good and kind and being helpful to other people and being successful. And that feels like revenge, and I love it.
Yeah,
Just,
and it's interesting because, there's certain words that you wouldn't associate with goodism.
mm-hmm.
Power, aggression, revenge.
Yeah, exactly.
That doesn't initially sound like, oh yeah, this is a really good person. But
Yeah.
if it's channeled the right way,
Yeah.
if it's done for the right reasons,
Mm-hmm.
it's good.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel really good about the fact that you are getting revenge as success,
Mm-hmm.
because you deserve it. You've been a good person your whole life. You haven't gotten everything you needed, but now you are starting to.
Yeah. And it doesn't matter to me what the people that I need the revenge towards think
Right.
at this point. It's
Yep.
what they can think what they want, but my success will be my revenge, and wherever they are is fine.
Yeah, I think you'll appreciate this, but the people I wanted revenge against,
Mm-hmm.
just like you're saying, their opinions don't matter.
Mm-hmm.
Your opinion matters to me.
Yeah.
Much more than theirs, because your opinion's worth it.
Mm-hmm.
Theirs isn't. They haven't even really begun to engage in the things that they need to in life.
Yeah. Yeah. It helps me have a little more compassion for them as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's steps towards forgiveness, whatever forgiveness means to people. It doesn't let them off the hook, but
right.
It lets me help see where they are in life and what makes them tick. And then they're on their own. I'm not going to try and help them or fix them or whatever.
I think that's such an important point. Actually, let me just highlight that. The idea of forgiveness is not they're off the hook and now I will go back to helping them.
Mm-hmm.
The idea of forgiveness is really about letting yourself not have to be eaten up by that and saying they can be who they want to be. They get to make their choices in life. I don't have to worry about it.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll do what they do.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
And now you're free to be on your journey.
Yeah.
Okay, so speaking of that, we've covered the 3 columns. We've covered the action steps. I wondered if you could just kind of sum up a little bit where you're at with things. If you have some lingering questions, anything like that, because what I want to know is that you feel like you've got a plan, that the columns make sense to you, and I just want to lay out how I think about it. The emotions column's not going to change that much.
Mm-hmm.
It's your themes are your themes.
Yeah.
They're the things that lead to the onsets and upticks and symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
The doubt column is going to continue to shrink and shrink and shrink and shrink.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes an old question will pop up, or a new question will pop up. And so we never stop working in the doubt column.
Mm-hmm.
But it shrinks, and I've seen it shrink even in the time I've been working with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons you're getting a lot of success. With the power column, I think the goal is to become more and more aligned with your core narrative, accept the fullness of your trauma, which you're doing now, and live as you want to in a way that enacts who you are and all your strengths.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I would sum up how this goes. And then you choose your action steps to do that. Do you feel like you have that plan largely in place? And whether it's yes or no, let's think about where you will need to go from here.
I do feel like I do. I'm not symptom free, but I'm okay with that. I see it as a work in progress, and I think it's going to be a day-to-day, moment-by-moment tweaking, at the same time, not just focusing on symptoms, getting out and living my life. I know where to find you if I have questions. I don't at this point, but I'm sure I will. And I'm sure stuff will come up again. But I feel empowered. I do feel empowered. I feel like I have a plan. And your, as you call it, your scaffolding, your framework that you've laid out really resonates for me. It's something that I can use and plug in. And I think just looking back on the sessions you did with Barb and Daniel and myself, they're all different. And so hopefully other people will see that too and see the differences and think, okay, I could do this too.
Yeah, it's a good point, because it really is true that I provide a scaffolding.
Yeah.
The columns are a scaffolding.
Yeah.
But we see how each person folds into that differently.
Yeah. Yeah. We're all going to be unique and different. So I'm sure, and I probably will ask you questions as we go along, but I feel like I have enough information that I feel pretty pumped about it, actually. And the fact that I'm not symptom free and I don't feel like $1 million and feel like running a marathon this afternoon, that's okay, because I know I'm going to get there. And I've had some big shifts, so I know it's going to happen.
Yeah. I mean, I also wanted to highlight, Diane, and I'm sure this is not surprising to you, most people by the end of 4 sessions aren't symptom free. It does happen. But usually they're not the people who get symptom free in 4 sessions, they usually weren't as deeply immersed in the mind-body experience. They may have had like an acute symptom. I told them what they needed to know, and it's like a book cure. Boom, they're done. Yeah. Most people make a lot of progress during the 4 sessions, but it's a lifelong journey. You know, I continue to become stronger and stronger in these areas. In all kinds of ways. In fact, you and I think just recently had, actually you made a comment on one of the podcasts, and I need to get back to you on it. It was about antidepressants and withdrawal. And you made a comment about chemo and how I think it was a friend of yours who was able to control the nausea of chemo through mind-body methods. And that's not to say there is no actual nausea it's not saying it's all one or the other, but you made a comment that I thought was very wise, which is, why not try to utilize this? Yeah, it wasn't a friend. It was a patient, a little 10-year-old girl who was incredible. Oh, wow. She earned me an A+ in a psychology course when I went back to university, because I used her as an example for a lot of things. But it is the kind of thing that you can choose to take that route. And even if there is another physiological reason underneath it, there's probably a huge mind-body component to it. And she just made up her mind that she was not going to have symptoms. And she recognized that well before the chemo, a day or two before, she'd start feeling unwell, and she'd be almost vomiting as she came in the door. And she just thought, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm going to do it in a different way. And she survived her cancer, and she was incredibly strong. Wow. So that was a very long time ago, but she taught me a lot. Yeah, the things we learn from other people, and especially those kids. Yeah. And I say this to my own kids. Kids know a lot. A lot of times we've kind of unlearned things that we should have held on to from childhood. There's a lot of wisdom in childhood because they haven't learned the things that we have confused ourselves about. So I listen to my kids a lot. There are things that they don't know about. I wouldn't trust them with how to build a car. But I think we can learn a lot from other people and from kids. And I was just thinking about that, the power of the mind and how far it goes. We're all still learning about it. Same thing with me. When I did my video on the COVID vaccine and was that side effects or not, I still don't know the answer to it. But I do know that it was very helpful and empowering to me to say, maybe there are things I can do about it, and I'm going to try. Yeah. As long as we're not countering major medical issues with that and ignoring doctors about that, then it's time where we can do it. And the mind-body experience goes very far. Yeah, I think it does too. Yeah. And the more you believe that, the better you're going to get. Yeah. So I think you're on a really good path. Diane, is there anything else that you wanted to say about any of this or hear from me about before we wrap up for today? No, it's been a tremendous opportunity. And again, thank you for your wisdom and your compassion and your guidance. It's been great. And I'll be a member of this community probably as long as I'm around.
however I can help other people and ask questions, because I'm sure I'll have stuff that will come up as well.
Well, you've been a very valuable part of the community already, and I know that will continue. And as I always say on here with these sessions, there's a great bravery and a great generosity in coming on here. But I also one thing I love about being powerful and about my own setup is that I value the moments.
Yeah.
And I want to say I value these moments I've had with you. I treasure them.
Likewise. Yeah. Yeah. So, and it's going to be, helping one person at a time. I see more and more people coming on, and, some of the other forms, fibromyalgia and that kind of thing, I'll foray into them. And I don't ever try and tell someone else how to do it, but I'll just let them know what my successes have been and how I've dealt with it. And every once in a while, somebody will go, "Oh, can you tell me a little bit more about that?" And so I'll just keep doing that. And also with friends. And my husband's noticed a huge change in me as well.
So I'm just going to finish up on this last thing because it's really important. Every single one of you out there can make a huge difference.
Mm-hmm.
Each one of you can save many, many lives or help people save their own lives. And just these one nugget of wisdom or two makes a huge difference. So keep up the comments and keep up the good work, Diane. And I appreciate having you by my side in this.
Good. Thank you, Dan. And I hope as people are listening, they realize that for me, it's been many, many years of pain. So those people who think I can't do it because it's been too long, it has been for me too. And I am doing it. So, yeah.
Thank you for saying that, Diane. That's very important. And it's a great reminder also that every time I do this with somebody, there's all kinds of messages people need to hear. And that was one of them. So I'm really glad you got that in there.
Yeah.
Thank you for everything, Diane. It's been a pleasure, and we will keep in touch.
We will. Okay. Thank you, Dan. And thank you, Greg.
Okay.
Take care.
You
Bye-bye.
too. Bye. What a pleasure to have worked with Diane in general. You can see what a pleasure she is just as a person, that she's dripping with goodism. And I mean that as high praise. But I loved getting to see in her action steps that she's not shying away from certain things that a goodist might shy away from. Things like aggression being something you can use adaptively, or to feel that you can put up boundaries that maybe other people wouldn't like. So lots of things in there. Actually, revenge as success was something I really didn't expect to see Diane say. And yet I could see that she really got the point underneath. She is fiercely in her own corner. She's ready to put herself in the mix of people who are deeply valuable in her life. It's a real honor to be part of, and I'm so glad she's well on her way. She's getting symptom relief already, and I look forward to hearing more about how it goes. If you haven't already, click subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, hit like if you like what you're hearing, and put your comments below, and I'll get back to you personally.